Thank you for invitation. Thank you also for inspiration. And many things, many words resonate also in my presentation, as you can see. My talk is about beyond capture of the future, but precisely about participatory envisioning and alternative metaphors. Our argument, quite simple, territorial development is not only about infrastructure planning, economics, is about imagination, as I said, as we saw. Starting point very close to this summit, what happened when we mistake one possible future for the only one. And mountain region, Alps, Alpine large, happen often. As a center future becomes familiar, so repeated, so institutionalized, that it stops appearing a choice, it becomes a common sense. And it becomes an infrastructure, it becomes investment, it becomes policy. At that point, the future is no longer simply imagined, but captured. This is what I'd like to explore with you, how this capture happens, how participatory foresight and system thinking, causal layer analysis can help us to reopen the space. Reopen the space for possible future. And I speak from a double position as a researcher working on alpine communities and a practitioner of using participatory foresight. Okay, let me begin with a simple statement. Vision matter, as we say. We saw in future study, we say that a future that does not exist, but images of future does exist. So they exist in policy, investment decision, tourism brochure, in local conflict, in family expectations. In triangle future, future triangle visions are the pools of the future. They interact with passions of the present, climate change, demographic shift, economic transitions, and with the weight of the past. Institution, joint costs, identities, habits, whole infrastructures. But also vision matters because they define what we consider desirable. And when we speak, when we use the words as development, resilience, attractiveness, sustainability, we're already speaking about not only technical goals, but speaking about images of future. Deeper question is, so rather than ask to what are the trends, what are the futures, deeper question is which futures is already guiding our decision, even when we do not name it. So the vision is not a prediction, is not about what will happen, is what a desirable state that give us direction to action. So distinction is important. If you confuse the vision with prediction, we become passive. If we confuse dominant vision with the only possible future, we become trapped. And vision matters, but not all vision are equally useful. Some vision are aspiring, but vague. Some vision are technically coherent, but socially cold. Some participatory, some vision could be participatory in appearance, but already predefined in substance. Some are sustainable in language, but weak in system understanding. So we find useful work for Vaik Ivaniak useful. They suggest criteria to evaluate, to assess the quality of vision. First, normative quality. Is the vision actually desirable and sustainable? Does it address justice, ecological limits, and intergenerational responsibility? Second, constructive quality. Is the vision systemic, coherent, plausible, tangible? Does it show how the future works? Or is it just a list of good intentions? Third, transformational quality. Is relevant, nuanced, motivational, shared? Can it move people, institution, and decision? So, a crucial point. High quality vision is not simply a beautiful sentence about the future, but is a bridge between imagination and transformation. And in fragile territories as in the Alps, low quality visions can be dangerous. They can justify maladaptation, greenwashing, and lock-in. So with colleague, some of friend and colleague from here are here, Elisa, Federico, and other. In recent, we took consideration a set of case study in surrounding region, in Lombardy, Trentino, Alto Adige, and Friuli and Veneto. So you can see. With each of these can be seen, can be read through the future triangle. There is a portion of the present, hate waves throughout extreme events. There are weights for the past, fragmented like land tenure, planning lock-in, dependence on winter tourism, but also poor the futures, cooler, safer valleys, climate resilient territories. And what the participatory visioning does at its best is not only collecting preferences, it helps people see system they are inside, name the inertia they inherit, and articulate future that is both desirable and actionable. The lesson is that participatory visioning does not remove constraints, it makes constraint visible and negotiable. Compare vision, quality of visions. When we look these cases through the quality criteria of visions, we can see different strengths and weaknesses. Strong visions are normally strong because they clearly address sustainability and intergenerational justice. Others are constructively strong because they translate vision into concrete roadmaps, indicators, backcasting steps. For example, Tyrol adaptation process is strong because reframes adaptation not only as a risk management, but as an opportunity to improve quality of life. Beyond Snow project is strong because democratize the futures, invites community to imagine themselves as good ancestor. Adapt Now, for example, show a typical challenge. If summer and winter tourism strategies are developed separately, the vision may miss systemic understanding, or miss systemic interdependencies. So, the message is vision is not only about imagination, it's also about quality of imagination. Good vision should stretch the present, but also should help us understand the system differently. And this bridge with the second part of my talk. Because vision do not float in the air, they are rooted in metaphors. Metaphors matter, of course, have even more deeply. Causa layer analysis from Swire and Nayatullah invite us to have a look at four levels. At the top, litany, visible problems, indicators, headlines in newspaper. Below that, systemic causes, institution, infrastructures, economic mechanism, governance arrangements, and the worldview, assumption that make certain policies appear natural. And finally, the deepest level, myth and metaphors. They are not decorative images, but that they are cognitive and emotional infrastructures. If we change only litany, we may get new indicator. If we change systems, we may get new policy. But if we change metaphors, we may open different futures. And this is why metaphor has not only rhetorical decoration, but infrastructure of imagination. And the alternative metaphor in other case. This part of the presentation developed a study developed with Marta Villa anthropologist, and applied causal layer analysis and the 4 alpine contests nearby in this province, Trento and province Bolzano, Montebondone, Madonna di Campiglio, with different extension, different population, really different weight of a tourism, million or 100,000 of visitors or overnights. The research combined long-term ethnographic engagement, participatory observation, anthropological dialogue, in-depth interviews, live stories, institutional documents, assessment or evaluation, media analysis, and development project. The purpose was not rank places as good or bad, but the purpose was interpretive, to understand which narratives and metaphors guide territorial development. The Alps are perfect in that, because they are not only landscapes, but they are living socio-ecological systems shaped by futures, collective ownership, demographic change, ecological fragility, and strong local identities. And now I asked to my chatbot to reduce my 20 slides into 2 slides. So at an Italy level, mountain future appear through familiar headlines. Traffic gridlots, rising rents, ski lift project, declining services. These litany are not false, they are real symptoms. But the problem with the litany is that tend to fragment reality. One issue becomes mobility, another becomes housing, another becomes tourism flows, another becomes landscape protection, and system thinking help us or ask us to resist to this fragmentation. The question is not only what is the problem, but the question is how these problems are corrected. And at the system level, when we began to see feedback loops or underpinning processes. For instance, destination marketing can increase demand can increase real estate pressure, real estate pressure make housing less accessible for residents. In this case, weaken local services and civic life, and then community become more dependent on tourism revenue to compensate decline where possible. At the same time, government is fragmented. Municipality, collective ownership institution, tourism board, investor, provincial agency, residents, second owners, visitors, all may call different time horizon, different perspective, different values. And this is where the future becomes captured systematically. Not by single villain, not by a wrong decision, but reinforcing loop, sunk cost, institutional routines, and indicator of success that keep point in the same direction. And at the worldview level, 2 dominant framing emerge. The first is we can call exogenous worldview. The mountain as a resource to consume or to benefit from. Its values are efficiency, accessibility, growth, technicness, competitiveness. And second, we call opposite extreme endogenous worldview, the mountain as heritage to protect. It values our tradition, autonomy, resilience, continuity, stewardship. But both worldviews are understandable, both have strengths, but both can become traps. The first can reduce mountain to commodity. The second can reduce the mountain to a museum. Of course, these are 2 extreme possible, not in reality. The reality is in between. So the tension is not simply between development and conservation, between different assumptions about what a mountain is, who it is for, who has the authority to manage its future. At the deepest level, we identify 2 strong metaphors in this looking at contrasting forces. And the first is the mountain as playground. Here's the mountain as adventure park, thematic park, place of performance, consumption, acceleration, visit experience. The second, the opposite, at the opposite end of this gradient, mountain is a reserve, a place to defend, to regulate, preserve, sometimes close. Again, neither metaphor is simply wrong. A playground can generate vitality and income. A reserve can protect ecosystems and cultural landscapes. But each metaphor selects what counts. In playground, success is measured through flows, arrival, overnights. In fortress, success is measured through protection, limits, access rules, compliance, conservation. In many alpine territories, these metaphors coexist or collide. This is why many territorial conflicts are not only conflict about the facts, they are conflicts between futures. Even if we do not name the underlying metaphor, the debate remains trapped at the surface. People argue about numbers, they actually defending their images of what the mountain is or should become. So this is the value of causal layer analysis. It's all us to say, wait, before decide a policy lever, let us understand the story that makes this lever appear obvious. And from this, another question appeared. Is there a third way? The same project can be interpreted in the opposite way depending on the metaphor. And possible collecting weak signal. We found this weak possible inspirational third way. Open hybrid village. It's not a romantic return to the past, but it's not a village as a closed community, but it's a community that combines innovation and tradition, local well-being and global connections, regenerating territories and shaping desirable futures together. In this metaphor, the key transition is from tourists to temporary citizens. People arrive not only as a consumer of landscape or as users of landscape, but they may become contributors to the place. Residents, returnees, remote worker, long-term visitors, local entrepreneurs, farmers, collective owners, young people can all become part of a wider ecology of belonging and contribution. So village could become open, hybrid, but not ruthless, connected but still place-based. A third metaphor we identify is weaker, more fragile, but promising. Maybe not realized yet, or only intentionally designed, intentionally imaged. This metaphor is not imagined mountain as a playground heritage, is something else, a third. Is a living community capable of multiple form of belonging and contribution. From that, other also litany question emerge, litany change. Instead of speaking how many tourists, how many restrictions, we could ask how many resident days, how diverse are livelihood, how many community agreements exist, how much local entrepreneurship, how accessible are the services, how much stewardship working is shared. So at system level, we find co-living, co-working, community cooperatives, collective ownership, short supply chain, land trusts, housing policies for residents, inter-municipality governance. And a worldview, we can see livability comes before attackness. Care and reciprocity can become development principle. And visitors are not only consumers, but they become contributors. At metaphorical level, then the mountain becomes a common in motion, not closed, not sold, but inhabited, cared for, and renewed. And This slide summarizes these contrasting futures. Exogenous model says tourism is an engine, the system is as destination marketing, the worldview is a mountain as community, the myth is a playground. For endogenous model says that protect inner areas, the system is defensive regulation, the worldview is a mountain as heritage, the myth is a fortress of reserve. The transformative scenario says create diverse communities. The system include co-living, co-working, the worldview is expanded community. The myth is open hybrid village. But please note, this is not a moral ranking. Not this is a right or wrong. It's a question of authorship and ownership. Who has the power to define the future for the territory? Who benefits from the dominant metaphors? Who is made visible? Who disappears between these extreme possibilities? So this is where participatory foresight becomes political in the best sense. It creates a space where futures can be named, compared, contested, and collectively re-authored. And from this, from New Italy, from the third option, the open hybrid village, also there are other interesting consequences or practical implication, the definition of carry capacity. Carry capacity is not neutral. We can't add too many visitors that it depend. What count as too many visitors depends on the metaphor through which the territory is understood. In the playground metaphor, carry capacity is physical infrastructure, beds, queues, parking, level of services, lift capacity. In the refuge metaphor, carry capacity is ecological, trail erosion, habitat disturbance, water restriction, wildlife stress. And in commons metaphor, carry capacity is social and institutional. Housing affordability, services access, civic participation, care networks, volunteerism, the ability of the community to reproduce itself across generations. So different metaphors generate different indicators, and different indicators generate different policies. And this is a crucial system inside. What we measure is not evidence of a worldview, it reinforces the worldview. If we measure only visitor flows, we will design for flows. If we measure only ecological disturbance, we will design for protection. If we will measure livability, reciprocity, stewardship, we may design for a living mountain community. So the last, to close with a simple question. What metaphor are you living in? Before planning, before investing, before designing a policy, we should ask which story is already shaping the territory. Are we living in a playground, in a fortress, in an open hybrid village, or in a metaphor we are not yet named? Because the future is often captured before we notice it. As a future capture when one metaphor becomes so dominant that alternatives appear unrealistic, naive, or invisible. And this can happen through capital investment, infrastructure, regulation, branding, data system, even expert language. Once a ski-based model as a sober measured investment, the future becomes path dependent. The question is no longer what future do we want, but how do we protect the investment? Once a territory is branded as a premium destination, the future becomes path-dependent again. And the question becomes, how do we increase attractiveness rather than attractive for whom? At what cost? At what kind of layoff? Once a landscape is treated only as a heritage, the future can also become path-dependent. The question becomes, how do we preserve rather than how do we regenerate? So capture futures are not only imposed by bad actors, often they emerge for well-intentioned decisions that they accumulate over time. And this is why anticipatory governance must intervene only early before an option disappear. Thank you.